From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Climate change is no longer unfolding in the background. It is now a major driver of the global food crisis.
Heat waves, droughts, floods, and widespread crop failures are disrupting harvests and threatening the livelihoods of millions of people, particularly in the most vulnerable regions. As the United Nations Environment Assembly meets this week at UNEP headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya, one urgent question comes to the forefront. How can countries strengthen resilience and transform food systems to withstand a rapidly warming planet?
Now, to help us make sense of both the challenges and the opportunities, we're joined by Richard Choularton, Director of Climate and Resilience at the World Food Program. Richard, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us at this hour. Now, from World Food Program's global experience, how is climate change affecting food security worldwide, particularly in vulnerable or conflict-affected countries where even small climate shocks can tip communities and families into crises?
That's right. We see that every day on the ground in our work. Extreme weather, floods, droughts, and storms drive food insecurity and hunger worldwide. They destroy crops, livestock, and livelihoods. They disrupt supply chains and markets. And in fragile, conflict-affected states, the impact is even more severe. These are the places where communities face high levels of poverty, malnutrition, displacement, and weak infrastructure, so that even a single failed harvest can drive entire populations from stressed into a full-scale food crisis. Last year, 96 million people were pushed into food insecurity by floods, droughts, and storms. It was the hottest year on record, and we estimate that with 1 degree of additional temperature rise, we could see another 275 million people pushed into crisis levels of food insecurity.
That is alarming. Now, World Food Program's ambitions and plans are plenty. Looking ahead, what are key ambitions for strengthening the climate resilience and reducing climate-induced food insecurity? And are there particular areas where you hope to scale innovation and deepen international partnerships?
Yeah, ultimately, the World Food Program's vision is simple. A world where climate extremes no longer drive hunger, and where communities have the tools and the systems and the resources they need to support food security. Some of the innovations that we really are working to scale up are designed both to help communities better prepare for and respond to crises, as well as to build long-term resilience so that when floods, droughts, or storms happen, they're not driven into food insecurity. We're implementing anticipatory action programs where we are using early warning systems and what we call forecast-based financing to get resources and information to communities before floods and before drought hit. Last year, for example, we reached 6 million people in 44 countries with this kind of tool. And in Nepal and Bangladesh, we estimated that it cost half of what it would have cost to respond after a disaster. We're also working to use insurance instruments to make sure that money is available when disaster does strike. And in the last 5 years have provided coverage to over 16 million people using innovative climate risk insurance tools, providing over $500 million worth of coverage. And those insurance policies, when floods or droughts have happened, have paid out $55 million. But responding to crises is not enough. We have to build resilience so that when floods and droughts occur, they don't turn into disasters. And they're working on ecosystems restoration, landscape rehabilitation, so that when there's excess rainfall or not enough rainfall, crops can grow, livestock can graze, is critical. And so we've been working to rehabilitate land, working with food insecure communities in many parts of the world. And that shows concrete results. So for example, in West Africa, we've worked with 7 countries to rehabilitate 300,000 hectares of land, working with 3,500 communities and 4 million people. In the last 2 years, where they've experienced drought in those communities, they have not required emergency assistance because they've been able to weather the shock. So those kind of resilience building interventions are essential. They support better nutrition, school attendance, and reduce conflict.
Now, China's climate food systems model is being observed. China has invested heavily in climate-smart agriculture, water-efficient irrigation, digital monitoring systems, and climate-resilient crop varieties. Efforts that have strengthened both productivity and food security. Which aspects of China's experience do you believe are relevant or scalable for countries grappling with climate-driven food insecurity?
There are so many things to learn from China's experience and the remarkable progress that China has had in lifting 770 million people out of extreme poverty while sustaining a fifth of the world's population with just 9% of the world's arable land. In fact, China is already sharing its knowledge and innovations with countries around the world in Africa and Asia and Latin America. So, for example, climate-resilient crop varieties. China's invested for decades in developing drought and flood-tolerant rice and wheat and maize. And these technologies have helped stabilize yield even under increasing extreme weather, and they're directly applicable to countries facing similar ecological pressures. Digital agriculture and early warning. And China's progress on digital agriculture in areas like mobile phone-based farm management have transformed how farmers can protect their crops and manage the risks from the climate. We worked with provincial authorities in Jilin to pilot a holistic risk management approach that combined many of these techniques as well as insurance to save water and fertilizer, increase yields. And those kind of examples can be shared. In fact, over the last 10 years, the World Food Programme China Center of Excellence, a partnership with the government of China, has worked with research academies, government agencies, universities, and the private sector to share this kind of lessons with the countries that need them the most.
Richard, thanks so much for joining us at this hour.
Thank you so much.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
Let's now turn to Latin America, where climate pressures are increasingly shaping daily life. Changing rainfall patterns and more frequent extreme weather events are placing new stress on agriculture.
Now, joining us for a closer look at the region is Raphael Leão, Program Policy Officer with the World Food Programme in Panama. Raphael, great to have you. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, talking about key challenges in Latin America's food security, Latin America faces recurring climate shocks, economic pressures, and structural inequalities. So from WFP's standpoint, what are the biggest challenges to food security in the region today?
Yeah, that's precisely the key challenge is the fact that this climate crisis does not come alone. No, it comes, and as you mentioned, it adds to economic instability, high levels of inequality. When we talk about climate-related shocks in the region, we talk about extreme droughts in the dry corridor of Central America. We talk about strong hurricanes in the Caribbean. And we also talk about the Amazon here in the South American region. We talk about this recurrent cycle of floods and droughts. There is this estimate we have that just last year, 2024, 96 million people around the globe were put in a situation of food insecurity due to climate-related shocks. And millions of these people, this population are in this region in Latin America. And finally, I think we also need to remember that, unfortunately, in this region, we see pockets of fragility and violence. So these people that are being affected by climate-related shocks, they are vulnerable, but they're also often in a situation of displacement related to to insecurity, related to violence. So they're really very close to the tipping point, in which even what we could call a small scale drought or a small, slightly higher level of rainfall put these people in a situation where they cannot cope. So that's why really we need to focus on building the resilience of these most vulnerable populations.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate to see this vicious cycle, where so much stress is put on people's livelihood. Now, many countries in Latin America have introduced new strategies on climate adaptation, rural development, and food systems. Are there policies or frameworks that you see as particularly promising or effective that can be scaled?
Yeah, look, I think the most positive trend we see is that governments in this region are more and more looking at combining three key elements of climate, the perspectives of climate, of food security, and social protection into one coherent approach. One is we see more and more strong national school feeding programs in which not only the kids are being given food at school, but also institutional procurement, public procurement is used as a leverage point to promote the development of local value chains. And this is done by connecting smallholder farmers to schools as suppliers of food to schools. And if we think of this initiative combined with the promotion of climate resilient agricultural production systems, then we really can talk about a coherent and strong and powerful contribution to local resilient food systems. The other example I want to give is this, the trend of more and more interest on shock responsive social protection. Basically, it means that in the case of a shock, the governments, they use the existing social protection systems to channel cash transfers to the most vulnerable families in a timely manner. And often this is also combined with early warning systems and what we call anticipatory action. Anticipatory action means rather than waiting for the shock to come and then we react to the shock, when we know the shock is coming, we anticipate the response. So a few days before, we provide this support to the most vulnerable families so that when the shock comes, they are better able to absorb this shock. Of course, these two examples I gave, some of them are innovative approaches and it requires frameworks to be adapted, systems to be developed, tools, methodologies, regulations. And that's why WFP have been working quite closely with governments across the region to do so.
Now, is there a story or a project from your line of work, perhaps a community or project you've firsthand helped or worked with that highlights these promising aspects where you overcame challenges in building climate resilient food systems in the region?
Yeah, let me give you an example precisely of the Amazon. And look, Amazon is the region of the world with the highest highest levels of food biodiversity. Still, this is the region where we see the highest levels of food insecurity compared to other regions of the Amazon countries. So this is the type of contradiction that we really need to put on the table and discuss solutions. No? And WFP is contributing to these solutions by moving ahead two work streams. Over 60% of the population of the Amazon live in cities. So absolutely, we need to talk about bioeconomy, promoting agroforestry systems, protecting the forest. This is for sure crucial. But we also need to look at the people living in cities and understanding the resilience and the sustainability of the food systems that is serving these populations. Also, WFP, in that sense, we've been working with municipalities in the Amazon region to build resilience and to build the sustainability of urban food systems. The other one is we've been producing studies, evidence, and methodologies and tools to promote the replacement of exogenous foods, imported foods, to Amazon foods.
Talking about China, China has expanded cooperation with Latin America in areas such as agriculture, clean energy, sustainable development. From your perspective, where do you see the greatest potential for China and countries in the region to work together to strengthen food security and climate adaptation?
China has this long-standing experience with rural development, with increasing agricultural production and promoting agricultural production based on smallholder farmers. So basically inclusive agricultural production, all these initiatives to reduce poverty. I think these are all examples and great experiences from which Latin American governments, Latin American countries can explore. At WFP, we have WFP Center of Excellence in China for over a decade now. And what we do is precisely through our Center of Excellence, we facilitate this technical assistance and exchange of good practices through what we call South-South and triangular cooperation, which is really facilitating this connection between Chinese government and other governments in the global South. Through this program, we have worked in 39 countries across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So Latin America, several of the countries have benefited from this approach. And I really think this is how Latin American countries can learn from China. And at the same time, this is an excellent way of China contributing to promoting resilient and sustainable food systems in this region.
Raphael, thank you so much for joining us at this hour.
Thank you, my pleasure.